This is the voice of Facebook XM. On today's session, we'll be talking about liquidity versus inducement. Most traders know what liquidity is. Most traders have heard of inducement, but very few traders actually understand the difference between these two concepts. Now, for the purpose of this video, I'll be illustrating and explaining deeply the difference and the similarities between liquidity and inducement, and how we can take advantage of these two concepts towards making better analysis. So now let's dive straight into the chart. So first of all, we'll carry out technical analysis, random technical analysis before we concept of liquidity and then the concept of inducement. So first of all, in carrying out an analysis, I do tell my people, I say, you start by identifying the trend, irrespective of your time frame. If you are a day trader, you start by probably going to the 4 hour or the 1 hour, whichever time frame you are comfortable with dealing on. You start by identifying the trend. So first of all, I want to identify the current trend of the market. And so once that is sorted, we want to start marking out our structures, right? Our market structures before we actually look for point of interest and then try to avoid being an inducement or a liquidity to the market. So now let's dive straight into it. First of all, we'll mark our break of structures. Now let me explain what the concept of swings is. So right here, if we are starting our analysis from here, let's call this our high, and then let's call this our low, the lowest where market went to before it actually broke structure. And the market give us a higher high, right? From the region the higher high was created, market give us a pullback. We have an order block that the market has failed to mitigate fair value gap. And what does this fair value gap? Fair value gap will attract the market. And if you look at this retracement, it has failed to fill the fair value gap. So this particular order block is still valid. So now let's come to the concept of inducement. What is an inducement? An inducement, from the name, as the name implies, simply means the market will create something that looks like what you are looking for, but then it's just a channel to lure you into taking an early entry, right? And this actually affect those traders that they are just too impatient enough to actually wait for their setup to form. So they want to take their entries and then with the aim of making profit, of course, right? But then without understanding the concept of inducement, you might always become an inducement to the market. And what does this inducement and this liquidity have in common? You want to ask, right? The liquidity, first of all, is everywhere in the market. We have the internal liquidity, we have external liquidity. But now, what relates liquidity and inducement together, right? First of all, the market will create an inducement to lure you into taking an early entry. Then, and at the end of the day, market would use that particular inducement as a liquidity pool. And why is the market actually doing something like that? The market actually needs liquidity to carry out the re-movement. When price hits the main POI, the market is going to move aggressively. That's the essence of liquidity. Liquidity pool is everywhere in the market. And when you tend to understand the concept of this liquidity, that's from that particular moment onwards, your edge over the market has increased with a very big percent. Right? So in essence, what I'm trying to say is the market has created an inducement right here, although this is a valid pullback, but then this pullback has failed to fill a fair value gap, and we were taught that the fair value gap is what attracts price. Right? It attracts price to fill before continuing the movement. And then this particular pullback, which is a 50% pullback, which is valid, has failed to fill the fair value gap. Simply means that this fair value gap is still valid, and then our PY has not been mitigated yet. So I'm talking about the inducement. Price has created this channel to lure traders into taking an early entries. So there are traders that will actually take their trade from this order block right here. Myself and so many of those traders watching this right now, we know that a pullback that has failed to fill a fair value gap and did not mitigate a valid POI, take that as an inducement. So I don't want to enter a long position, stack up their long position from this region, target the external liquidity at the other end, right? But what happened? The market actually sweep them out as a liquidity, right? So this particular channel that was formed there, it was an inducement. So the market actually needed liquidity to carry out this original movement, thereby creating an inducement. Like I said, inducement is just like a mirror that looks exactly like an order block, like a valid order block, and then ended up what inducing so many other traders into what taking an early entry, right? That's the way inducement actually works. So now, for me, we actually identify this as our inducement. I will say IDM. We'll take our trade from the original POI that has a very, very valid fair value gap and an unmitigated OB from here. So we'll take our trade, right? So this is a very, very healthy strategy on how to actually take an entry on the market without being scared of being an inducement or a liquidity to the market. Thank you. So kindly like, comment, and then subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to turn on your notification bell so that whenever we drop a new video, you'll be first to be notified.